Dr. Jose Rizal. Jose Protasio Rizal Mercado y Alonso Realonda was a Filipino nationalist, writer and polymath, active at the end of the Spanish colonial period of the Philippines. He is considered the national hero of the Philippines. Apolinario Mabini. Apolinario Mabini Imaranan was a Filipino revolutionary leader, educator, lawyer, and statesman who served first as a legal and constitutional advisor to the revolutionary government and then as the first Prime Minister of the Philippines upon the establishment of the First Philippine Republic. Claro M. Recto. Claro Mayo Recto Jr. was a Filipino politician, jurist, and poet. He is remembered for his nationalism, for the impact of his patriotic convictions on modern political thoughts, and has seen in the same class as Dr. Jose Rizal, Senator Jose W. Jocno, and Senator Lorenzo Tañada. Isabelo de los Reyes. Isabelo de los Reyes, a Florentino, also known as Don Belong, was a prominent Filipino politician, writer, and labor activist in the 19th and 20th centuries. He was the original founder of the Iglesia Filipina Independiente, an independent Philippine national church. Document analysis about to the young women of Malolos. What type of document is this? To the Young Woman of Malolos is an essay that acts as a letter for the young women of Malolos. Who wrote the document? Jose Rizal wrote a letter to a group of young women of Malolos on February 22, 1889 in support of their plan of putting up a night school. Who is the intended audience of the document? The Filipino woman was Rizal's intended audience of the document. He emphasized to the said audience the responsibility of Filipino mothers to their children. What is the historical context behind the document? What do you know about the document? The so-called Women of Malolos comprised of 20 women from prominent Chinese Filipino families in Malolos, Bulacan, who signed and presented a letter to Governor General Valeriano Weyler on December 12, 1888, requesting permission to open a night school where they could be taught in the Spanish language. The Spanish parish priest, Father Felipe Garcia, objected so that the Governor General turned down the petition. However, the young women, in defiance of the friars' wrath, bravely continued their agitation for establishment of the school, a thing unheard of the Philippines in those times. They finally succeeded in obtaining government approval for their project on condition that Señorita Guadalupe Reyes should be their teacher and that classes be held in the daytime and not at the night. The incident caused great stir in the Philippines and in far away Spain. Marcela H. Del Pilar, writing in Barcelona on February 17, 1889, requested Dr. Jose Rizal to send a letter in Tagalog to the brave women of Malolos. Why was the document written? Rizal's letter to the women of Malolos emphasized reason and supported the education of women so that they might be enlightened. Religiousness required reason. Without reason, there was only religiosity. What does the document tell you about the condition of Filipino society during the time that it was produced? The Philippines was controlled by the Spaniards and the Catholic Church. Women were no longer allowed to hold high position and participate in political activities. She was even snatched on the right to express her thoughts, being instructed to stay within the shadow with her lips sealed. What are the basic assumptions made by the author of the document? Jose Rizal was greatly impressed by the fighting spirit that young women of Malolos had shown. In his letter, he expresses great joy and satisfaction over the battle they had fought. In this portion of Rizal's letter, It is obvious that his ultimate desire was for women to be offered the same opportunities as those received by men in terms of education. What is the document reliable? Why do you think that the document is reliable? Jose Rizal was deeply impressed by the competitive spirit displayed by the young women of Malolas. He expresses great happiness and satisfaction in his letter about the battle that they had fought. I could tell he was sincere after reading the entire letter he wrote. Can you believe this document isn't reliable? Why do you think so? During those days, young women were not sent to school because of their universal notion that they would soon only be taken as wives and stay at home with the children. Rizal, however, emphasizes on freedom of thought and the right of education, which must be granted to both boys and girls alike. What does the document mean to you? In recent times, it seems that these qualities are gradually lost in the way Filipino women conduct themselves. There are often times moments where mothers forget their roles in rearing their children because of the overriding ideas of having to earn for the family to supplement their husband's income. Although there is nothing negative about working hard for the welfare of the family, there must always be balance in the way people go through life. Failure in the home cannot be compensated by any amount of wealth or fame. The True Decalogue. What type of document is this? The True Decalogue was written as an introduction to the Malolos Constitution. It is a set of rules which serves as a guide of Filipinos on how to be better citizens. However, it was not included in the Malolos Constitution ratified in 1898. Who wrote the document? The True Decalogue by Apolinario Mabini presents his Ten Commandments, which focuses on God and on the country. Who is the intended audience of the document? One of Mabini's greatest work was his draft of a constitution for the Philippine Republic. It was accompanied by what he called the True Decalogue, published in the pages following. Mabini's 10 commandments are so framed as to meet the needs of Filipinos' patriotism for all time. What is the historical context behind the document? What do you know about the document? On June 24, 1898, Apolinario Mabini printed a pamphlet that contained the documents of True Decalogue and the constitutional program of the Philippine Republic. That formed from the basic documentation of the program pertinent to the revolutionary government being established by the revolutionary government of the Aguinaldo. In order for the people, in Mabini's word, to understand that reason and your conscience constitute the only solid and true basis of your moral education, in the same way that honest work is the real basis for your material education. Mabini continued by stating in that what was contained in the document were his proposals for the internet revolution for the people to adopt a moral and behavioral guide, and for the external revolution of the revolutionary government to expose as the framework of governance. Why was the document written? One can observe some of the major expressions of Mabini's liberal, republican, and Masonic ideas in the True Decalogue. Well acquainted with the Masonic moral code, Mabini would expound the liberal, moral, and patriotically oriented code for Filipinos to take in their desire to be free. What does the document tell you about the condition of Filipino society during the time it was produced? This implied that all men and women were already endowed with a moral conscience that would lead them to the recognition of Supreme Being, while at the same time working towards the attainment of moral virtues and just conduct. What are the basic assumptions made by the author of the document? The True Decalogue by Apolinario Mabini presents his Ten Commandments, which focuses on God and on the country. The first Decalogue orders everyone to love and honor God and honor above all things. What is the document reliable? Why do you think that the document is reliable? The boundaries between moral philosophy and political philosophy was blurred in Mabini's Decalogue, as is saw in the formulation both the realization of moral rectitude and political independence that Filipinos should advance if Filipinos were to achieve that he termed as objectives of human life. Can you believe this document? Is it reliable? Why do you think so? This ascription to one's conscience and the belief in the supreme being would lead to the refinement of one's character, development of one's creative skill and capabilities, and the achievement by humanity of the values of goodness, justice, and honor necessary in glorifying God. What does the document mean to you? Because of this, while the borders of the nation are established and preserved by the egoism of race and the family remain standing, you must remain united to your country in perfect solidarity of use and interest in order to gain strength, not only to combat the common enemy, but also to achieve all the objectives of human life. Nationalism and culture. What type of document is this? Nationalism and Culture by Clara M. Recto is a speech where he points out that why Filipinos are allowing foreign interference in our political and economic affairs. Who wrote the document? Nationalism and Culture is written by Clara M. Recto, who is politician in 1950s. Who is the intended audience of the document? Recto simply aimed for the Filipinos and their leaders to make sure that Philippines' national interests were not sacrificed and give way to the American dream of how the world should be run. What is the historical context behind the document? What do you know about the document? Recto was elected president to draft the Philippines Constitution and personally presented the Commonwealth Constitution to President Roosevelt for his approval and signature. He also served the country as Associate Justice of the Supreme Court. In 1940s, he ran for the Senate and garnered the highest number of votes among the 24 elected senators. He was appointed Commissioner of Education, Health, and Public Welfare, and later, Minister of State and Foreign Affairs. In the Laurel War Cabinet, he was charged with treason for collaboration with the Japanese. He pleaded not guilty and proved that he had connection with the underground movement. In the course of preparation of his defense, he published 2 books, 3 Years of Enemy Occupation and The Law of Belligerent Occupation. Clara M. Recto did not take advantage of amnesty issued by President Manuel Rojas to collaborators and instead worked for and go acquittal from the People's Court. He was elected senator in 1955, ran as Liberal Party guest candidate for senator and won the 6th slot. He bid for presidency in 1957 but lost to Ramon Magsaysay. Why was the document written? Recto simply aimed for the Filipino and their leaders to make sure that Philippines' national interests were not sacrificed and give way to American dream of how the world should be run. The Americans consequently accused him of being anti-American and worse, an atheist. What does the document tell you about the condition of Filipino society during the time that it was produced? As a Commonwealth of the United States before and during the war, Filipinos are legally American nationals with American nationality. Filipinos are promised all the benefits afforded to those serving in the armed forces of the United States. What are the basic assumptions made by the author of the document? Nationalism is the natural antagonist of colonialism. Nations that are still ruled by imperial powers are rallying behind nationalist leaders to secure their independence. Nations like Philippines that have succeeded in regaining their political independence must still rely on the nationalist spirit in their struggles against colonialism. What is the document reliable? Why do you think that the document is reliable? The Philippines will never have a man as noble as Claro M. Recto again, who has dignity and sensitivity for his fellow men. His legacy and contribution to the country will remain to date as long as the country suffers the steep of imperialism and our government being run by dishonest officials who perpetuate the deprivation of public services from the Filipino people. Can you believe this document? Is it reliable? Why do you think so? Recto's relevance to the present lies not so much in the continuing validity of his nationalist premises as in his contribution to the forward march of his history. What does the document mean to you? This courageous attempt to break away from the colonial condition was itself a great single effort which contributed to today's relative enlightenment. Guide question: who is a social thinker? The social thinkers are Dr. Jose Rizal, Apolinario Mabini, Clara M. Recto, and Isabela de los Reyes. What makes Jose Rizal, Apolinario Mabini, Isabela de los Reyes, and Clara M. Recto famous social thinkers? Jose Rizal, Filipino thinker and activist, may be considered the first systematic social thinker in Southeast Asia. While the bulk of his writing were not in the social science, it is possible to extract a sociological theory from his work. Apolinario Mabini was a Filipino political philosopher and architect of the Philippine Revolution. He formulated the principle of democratic popular government, endowing the historical struggle of the Filipino people with a coherent ideological orientation. Claro M. Recto was a Filipino statesman, jurist, poet, and one of the foremost statesmen of his generation. He is remembered for his nationalism, for the impact of his patriotic conviction on modern political thought, and has been seen in the same class. Dr. Isabela de los Reyes, A. Florentino, also known as Don Belang, was a prominent Filipino politician, writer, and labor activist. 19th and 20th centuries. He was the original founder of the Iglesia Filipina Independiente, an independent Philippine national church. What are the social ideas and contribution to Filipino social and political philosophy of Jose Rizal, Apolinario Mabini, Isabela de los Reyes, and Clara M. Recto? Dr. Jose Rizal's contribution to Philippine independence and nationalism have made a mark in almost every part of the Filipino identity, and even developers have come to name structures and institutions after him. Apolinario Mabini was a Filipino political philosopher and architect of the Philippine Revolution. He formulated the principle of a democratic popular government, endowing the historical struggle of the Filipino people with a coherent ideological orientation. Clara M. Recto presided over the assembly that drafted the Philippine Constitution in 1934 to 1935, accordance with the provision of the Tithing McDuffie Act and a preliminary step to independence and self-governance after a 10-year transition period. Isabela de los Reyes had his first brush with socialism during his stay in Barcelona, where he mingled with anarchists, syndicalists, socialists, and other ideological thinkers. The new way of thinking resonated with him, and on his return, he set out to organize the workers of Manila.